Hey guys, welcome to another video, Purple Political Talk here. Today we're going to be looking at the 2020 presidential election according to the Economist Forecast. So the Economist Forecast is one of the better forecasts out there. They're one of the most unbiased news sources when it comes to giving news, projections, and all these different things. So we're going to look at this forecast, analyze it, and talk about how it represents the 2020 presidential election. So let's get started. So the Economist Forecast right now, they have Joe Biden ahead, 9 in 10 chances of winning, so around 88%. So they do it in chances of 10, so 9 in 10, but it's 88%. Well, Donald Trump's at 1 in 10, or about 12%. So this shows us that they still think Joe Biden's ahead, and Joe Biden's chances are still very high, according to the Economist Forecast. And looking at this compared to other forecasts we've seen, like the GSK forecast, looked at the 538 forecast, those forecasts are a lot more generous with Donald Trump than this forecast when it comes to giving him chances of victory. And I think for the Trump campaign, if they can lead in a couple of these forecasts constantly, that shows that a movement is up. However, we haven't seen a huge spike for Donald Trump. We saw some minor bumps here and there. However, it's not that much. Well, when it comes to the popular vote, Joe Biden is pretty much almost guaranteed statistically to win the popular vote. He has a 98% chance, a better than 19 in 20 chance. And Donald Trump has a 2% chance or less than 1 in 20 chance of winning the popular vote. Does that mean it's impossible for the president? No. However, it's very highly unlikely. So, I mean, at this point, the popular vote, we're seeing the Democrats are probably going to carry that. And just looking at historical past events, how the Democratic Party has started to gain a lot better with the popular vote, and they started to do a lot better, we can tell that they can go through and probably win here by a substantial margin if the election is like this forecast is saying. And well, the forecast now for the electoral count, it's very, very interesting. Right now, they have currently Joe Biden ahead, actually, 217 to 424, about that range for Joe Biden. So in a worst case scenario for the vice president, 217. For a base case, 424. While for Donald Trump, his worst case is 114. And his best case is 321. So we're seeing that margin in the Electoral College. There is still room for overlapping, which means the race is going to be contested. However, right now, Joe Biden has a clear edge over the president, because looking at the safe states, he has so much more states that realistically is going to help him get over the edge. So this is the first thing that we saw, at least like the first basic data with chances of winning the popular vote and the Electoral College. So this graph shows us the Electoral College count, I guess, over time. And I think it's very interesting because there was a point in the election, I mean, early March, where Donald Trump was being very competitive with Joe Biden. There was a point that they were almost like, we're tied in the Electoral College. However, all of that has changed. And ever since, I mean, the Black Lives Matter movement, which lost Donald Trump some support, that really hurt him hard, at least when it comes to the Electoral College. And no longer is there kind of the big purple overlapping, meaning there's a very high chance of being a very close Electoral College. However, we still have the narrowing up that's kind of needs to happen due to like regular post conventions and early campaigning things. So I think honestly at this point, Donald Trump can probably go up. However, that is not a given. And looking at this, so in the median, so those are the blue and red lines, and then there's like little big shadows. So the darker one is the 60% and 90% confidence. So I think at this point in time, Donald Trump and his campaign will have to look at a way to come back up in the polls, because we saw here that he went severely down after a movement, not only in the polls but in the Electoral College. Their peak during this election for the Trump campaign was around 250 electoral votes. So that's like the Electoral Map, where we look at the Rust Belt minus Michigan. However, it's still not looking too good for them as of right now. Again, the Republican National Convention just finished 2 days ago. I'm going to make a video about that soon, but that convention is probably going to bring them at least a little bump in polling data and these other things. Because, I mean, I think a lot of Americans during the convention, they can connect to the Republican Party, when other times it's a little harder to. So I think at this time, if the Trump and Republican Party are able to use the convention to their favor and being able to get as much momentum from it as possible, they could go up into the go up and maybe narrow down the race, which again is going to make it easier for them to go through and win. However, the Biden campaign, they've been steady for the last months, and this race hasn't changed much. At least electorally in the last month, we've have those up and downs for both sides of the aisle. But I mean, there was like a little down bump when he chose Harris. However, everything's starting to go back again, and then he has a little down bump again. Now, when looking at chances of winning, again, we can signify here the events that really affected the election and in a couple cases. So here was the pandemic. I think everything was going a little bit downhill for Trump. It wasn't as fast. And I think that what really did it for him was, like, I guess, like, after the pandemic started to being hard hit. Because remember, he thought, and his team thought, by August 16th, everything would have been fine. However, that did not happen, so he started going down. Then we had Black Lives Matter movement, which really affected the president, which started around mid to late May and went through all of June. And that really is what went down and kind of shot him down in the polling data. So, and the chances of victory, because this is not polling data, but chances of victory. And I think those events are really big correlations. So we saw him going up a little bit, maybe a little bit after some of the events that have happened, that are favoring him a little bit. But still, Biden has huge chances of victory, which is good for his administration. And we looked at this graph. Now let's go through the Electoral College simulations, which shows us what are the chances of something happening. And through the simulations they've given, what are the most likely outcomes. So when they say chances of victory at the whole level of the forecast, they're talking about simulations, how often they come up. So they ran 40,000 simulations. So the chances of one of those results being accurate are pretty much guaranteed. But I think at this point we can see a couple spikes, and we see a lot more blue on this graph than red, which means Biden has an advantage when it comes to winning the election electorally. So we see that there are some spikes. So there's some spikes here. For example, there's a large amount of 319. So if I'm correct, this is the scenario where they win Florida, but they do not win North Carolina. They have a couple scenarios here, like 334, which is Florida and North Carolina. And then as we start winning Texas, Ohio, at this point, Texas. That is when those margins start coming up. So it's going to be interesting to see, especially since these states are states that really do affect the election. And I think, honestly, at this point in time, this graph really shows Biden's chances of victory in an objective, and it shows it in a very good way, because here we can tell that the biggest chance for the Republicans to win is if they win the Rust Belt. There are some chances for them to win what they won in 2016. However, those chances aren't through the roof like they should be. And I mean, that's worrisome for some Republicans, I would say, because I mean, going against Biden, I say, is a very tough election, I guess, for Trump in certain ways. Because I mean, he's going to have support of the rest of the Democratic Party, which really realistically has gathered around Biden pretty well as a party. So I think, honestly, the Democrats have a lot of momentum. However, they have to use it correctly. If they don't use it correctly, then I think they're toast in certain states. However, I mean, we know that things can definitely change. Okay, now going through this electoral map, which shows us the chances of victory for each party in certain states. So, and it also shows us by the size of the states. So this map here shows us what states are kind of the more likely to go, the least likely, and which states, the ones in here in the black box, are going to be tilting points in the election. So states like Wisconsin, 85% chance of going to Joe Biden. Michigan, 87. Florida, 78. Texas, 2 and 3 for going for Donald Trump. And I think a lot of this map is very worrisome, I would say, for the president. He doesn't win Florida, mind you. I think the president is over. The election is over for him. And realistically, he's going to have to win a state like Florida. He's going to have to win a state like Arizona, and he's going to have to win one of the Rust Belt states, because if not, he can't win the election. Mathematically, it's going to be impossible. So I think right now we're seeing a lot of blue on this map, and a lot of these states, for example, Arizona, 2 in 3 chance. Arizona is going for Biden the same chances of Texas going to Trump, which, if we would have said this a couple years ago, this would have sounded insane. However, the country is changing demographically, and people's political views are changing to the pandemic, due to some of the riots, and honestly, that's where we're going to see be the biggest impacts on the 2020 presidential election. The closest states right now, according to this, are the states of North Carolina, which are pretty much 50-50, Georgia 50-50, Ohio 50-50, and I'm guessing that's Iowa 50-50. And then a little bit more Texas, and then everything else is pretty much all the more solid Republican states, which, I mean, at this point in time, I would say the Democratic Party has a very good map for them. And as long as they're able to keep this map the way it is, they're going to win the election because, again, the Electoral College. However, they start losing Pennsylvania, if they lose Florida, it's going to get tougher and tougher to win. So that's somewhere where I feel like the Democratic Party needs to focus on and maybe lock down those states, because they think at this point in time, going through and going campaigning somewhere else is maybe not the best option. And we have another, we have the polling averages. So this shows the polling averages long term. So we've seen that this has Biden ahead by Trump ever since the beginning by 7 points. It's narrowed down a lot more. Now it's more like 10 points, which is not good for the parties, because I think at this point in time, Biden, I think that for Trump, he's going to have a higher hill to climb. But for Biden, I think that the leads in the polls might get him a little bit more comfortable than he actually might be. And we might see a 2016 effect. When it comes to polling averages, they project by the time we get to election day is going to be pretty similar to where we are today, maybe just a little percentage points less. And here we have like the latest polls nationwide, plus 11.4. They weigh these for political bias, by the way. Plus 9.9, plus 13.7, plus 8.5. Very good results for former Vice President Biden. So that's going to be interesting to see. Now, we're gonna see how the states so this is how the states move together and how the race moves. So if the states, for example, if a state like Nevada, for example, is going through an election, so if it goes for Trump, the chances of these states moving a little bit towards Trump are like that. So this is going to calculate the similarity between states by comparing their demographics and political profiles. So the most common states, so for example, in Nevada, the most like state is the state of Arizona. For Florida, it is the state of it's the state of Pennsylvania. And we're seeing that in a lot of these places, states really change depending on where they are. These swing states are going to be less related to other parts of the country, but here we can see Texas, very high correlation with the western part of the country. Well, states like North Carolina, they have a very strong correlation with the midwestern South, if we could call it that. People would call it the Southwest, but we can see like in a lot of these places, it really does depend. And states like Colorado are very like to states like Utah, and states like not Wisconsin, but Oregon, Washington. And we can tell by the political ideology that they have that is truly what is happening. So this map is very interesting to watch. It has barely anything to do with the election, I would say, because it has to, for example, if this map was true, it would say that California has the same chance of going to Biden than Texas. However, this is comparing something else different, because I guess the map is a little misleading because it's just comparing demographics, how they vote, and things like that. So this is the Economist forecast for August 29th, 2020. And this was a very interesting video to make. And we know that now that this forecast is very good in data. It has a lot of data that we can analyze to see where does the election stand today. And I think at this point, this shows that Biden has a surmountable lead nationwide. Well, President Trump is going to have to do some catching up if he wants to get to the White House again. which I'm guessing he does because he wouldn't be running for president if he wasn't. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, please give it a huge thumbs up, like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to get notified when I post my next video. Hope you enjoyed the video, and goodbye.